So they're just gonna try her laptop.
Oh, okay.
All right, everyone, welcome to the webinar. And we're going to have our panel and go ahead and get started.
Thank you.
Good
Good
there you go,
morning.
Katie.
Yeah, I'll do a quick introduction and then Judge Kendall, you can take it away. But my name is Katherine Alexander. I helped put this panel together with the Center of AI. The Center of AI is transforming our understanding of AI as applied to business and society. We develop insights and tools to solve business and social problems with AI, and they equip the next generation of leaders with the insights and expertise to be successful in a world where AI is fundamentally impacting how people do business and justice around the world. So with that, we are going to use this panel to look at how AI is leveraged both positively and negatively in combating human trafficking. We have a breadth of expertise on this panel. I'll let them introduce themselves when they do. But quick introduction to me, I'm a second-year Booth student, getting a joint degree, MBA and master's in clinical social work. And I have about 10 years of volunteer and work experience within the human trafficking field, having previously interned with the International Justice Mission and the Human Trafficking Institute, and currently taking the law class with Judge Kendall. So I will introduce Judge Kendall. I'll let you introduce it as well, but she is a wealth of knowledge, one of creating the first human trafficking task force, and has been a leader in this space, doing many teaching across all of the schools in the University of Chicago and traveling to many different countries, educating the legal systems in different countries how to fight this. So Judge Kendall, I'll toss it to you.
Thank you so much. I have this wonderful student and she's put this together for you, so thank you. I'm Virginia Kendall. I'm the chief judge of the Northern District of Illinois. That's the federal trial court in Chicago. We are in a snow globe right now in my building. We've got a whole big snowstorm. I don't know how the rest of you have. I will be very brief. I was a federal prosecutor 30 years ago for about 11 years. And I was working in child exploitation cases when we did not have the Palermo Protocol or the TVPRA. And I worked transferring into that area of law. And I've been on the bench 20 years, and I do a lot of global training and domestic training of judges. But, excuse me, how does AI fit into this? So let's talk first to Caleb. Introduce yourself, sir, and tell me what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Judge Kendall. And it is sunny and nice here in South Carolina, so I'm sorry. My name is Caleb Carroll, and I am from right outside of Clemson, South Carolina. And my background is I was in law enforcement here in the state of South Carolina for 14 years. I did lots of different things, but eventually focused in on investigating ICAC, or Internet Crimes Against Children, as we affectionately call the field in the U.S., and was investigating all forms of violence against women and children, which included human trafficking. And then in 2019, I went with International Justice Mission, spent 3 years in the Philippines, embedded with Philippine law enforcement, trying to help them increase their capacity to combat the live streaming abuse of children online. Then went into the cryptocurrency tracing space, blockchain analytics, for a little while, and was able to come back to International Justice Mission back in July as a specialist in investigations and law enforcement development. And I particularly help our teams all across the world do criminal analytics, open source intelligence work, and policy guidance. So really excited to be here, and thank you, Judge Kendall.
Sharon, please tell us about your involvement with this issue.
Thank you, Judge Kendall. My name is Sharon Pursey. I'm based in the United Kingdom, so we're 5 hours ahead of you, and it's been quite a nice day over here. I am co-founder of a company called SafeToNet, and we create AI technology to detect harm in order to keep children safe online. We've been doing this for about 13 years. And it feels actually like we've tried so many different types of tools in order to keep children safe. And over that journey, my role has been advocacy, policy, and building strategic relationships. So over these years, I have, given that we're a commercial entity, fought to get a seat at the table, if you like, while we develop our tech in order to meet the right people and understand what technology is required. But the technology, I'll not go into it in too much detail, is called Harm Block. And it's an AI tool that has been trained to detect illegal, harmful sexual images of children. And it also detects legal content. We deploy it into the operating system of any smart device with a camera. It's very fast, it's very accurate, and so it acts in real time, detecting and blocking live stream of child sexual abuse in the moment on any device. I'll leave it at there because I could go on all night.
Right, right. And I think we could all have a million questions, but let's first meet Rochelle, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Rochelle Cahan. I currently am the founder and CEO of Collective Liberty. We created the National Human Trafficking Fusion Center. It's the only fusion center focused just on trafficking and at national scale. My background is as a prosecutor. I was a DA in Philadelphia. I became a DA the same year we got our state statute on trafficking, so I was sort of building the plane as we flew it. And the work I do now is born out of the necessity and urgency and overwhelm I felt as a DA with no tools available to me to do what I needed to do to prosecute these guys.
That's fantastic. Well, that is really my first question. I think Sharon's already answered some of it, but we don't usually think of using AI in the area of human trafficking. We, of course, know that technology is used in human trafficking, and we're very much aware of social media being used in human trafficking. But what do you think are the opportunities in your field that you have with what you've been working on that might prevent or help us to prevent, like Sharon was just describing, human trafficking? And I'll start again with Caleb, please.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of things. First, I think in the law enforcement and digital evidence space, there are a ton of applications that are coming out that help to identify human trafficking and child exploitation, that help to categorize it. Because one of the challenges we face on this side is that turnover and burnout is so high, because looking through these images and hearing these things is incredibly vicariously traumatic. So I'm really encouraged by some of the forensic applications of AI that are out there. The other thing I would say here, and it's not just because she's on the call with us, but I am a huge fan of SafeToNet and the work that Sharon and her team have done, because I think one of the struggles we face with detecting abuse imagery and exploitation and this harmful stuff online is that there is always this back and forth between privacy rights and how do we stop harm online. Well, I was kind of your stereotypical cynical law enforcer and thought, oh, there's no way we'll ever truly stop it, right? We just do as much as we can. That was until I met Sharon and heard about their product, because conceivably their product is a great middle ground. AI machine learning to detect this on the device is a great middle ground between privacy and child protection in that space, because it's not reporting anywhere. It's not it just stops the ability to create it or share it. And I think that's amazing. I truly could envision a world where you stop child exploitation, and then the use cases are endless beyond that. So I'm really encouraged by those things in the AI and machine learning space.
Well, Sharon, tell us, is law enforcement using your tool, or is it solely like who's buying it, who's using it? What are the applications that it has?
So I think the challenge that we've had to date, and why everybody's been struggling so much, is because it's been on the after the event. We've been trying to pick up the pieces all the way along. We need to get ahead of the curve and prevent the harms from happening in the first place. I think so. That's how we looked at this problem as a tech company, developing something that is so accurate and fast that it can detect harm in the moment and block the image. So it's essentially an image classifier that is very, very fast and efficient. It's never going to be 100%. And it's never going to be, you know, I think it's 3 milliseconds, but that's multiple times faster than the human brain can process an image. But I mean, in the past, we've been looking at, you know, photo DNA, the ability to DNA stamp an image and then search for it and pull it down. But we've got to the point now where AI is actually developing, you know, images on its own. There's so much illegal content. Some of it is created and some of it is real, and law enforcement just cannot cope with it. And for a long time, tech companies, and they still do say it's not possible, but tech like ours is now.
So can yours detect AI generated child pornography as well?
Yeah, it is. And we sell it. So we started off thinking, oh my goodness, every platform and service on the planet's going to buy this. You know, this is amazing. That was about a year ago. However, platforms and services are not commercially motivated to stop this, sadly, but we are what we are. So that's why we adapted to put it in the operating system of tech, like phones, because parents are motivated to buy phones that keep their children safe. So rather than going head to head with platforms, we decided to go with the business model, sell it to handset manufacturers who then will sell it via the likes of Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile to families that are desperate for something anyway.
Is it expensive?
Well, we're working with HMD Nokia. So that's our first customer, if you like. This is only a year old.
Right.
It'll go in as a more reasonably priced. I think it's going to be about $200 as an Android device.
Right.
So we will see. I mean, it's not available yet. It's new tech.
Right. So Rochelle, do you think that with the advent of AI and the development of all of this created imagery of child exploitation, that your organization can do something with that as well?
So we have a different focus. And I don't know that we're going to switch into that lane anytime soon. We try not to duplicate what's going on, but AI is a primary feature of the work that we're doing.
Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So it's a good segue from what Sharon mentioned about, I think so much of the effort has been focused on, you know, after the abuse happens, how can we heal people? But if there's never consequences and there's no prevention and the trafficker, everyone that's been victimized knows, is out there still doing it, it's almost even like you can't fully heal, you know? So first of all, we should stop it from happening. But also, I think we've had too narrow of a focus on what healing can look like. So a lot of our work has been on building out the cases and fixing the gaps in criminal justice. So for example, when I was a prosecutor, one of our traffickers, everything was on an encrypted thumb drive. The fusion centers couldn't hack it. We got it all the way up to the 3-letter agencies and we couldn't access the intel, right? Like, that's ridiculous. So he just encrypted well. And so now he's going to have no consequences. No. So we need to be following all the stuff that they can't encrypt because they have to use open public avenues to get their customers to recruit their victims. So there are ways to build the cases around some of that. But also we need to be thinking about more advanced technology available. Like, they shouldn't be a decade ahead of us at all times when it comes to their technical capacity. So what can we be doing to think about that? So sure, we're collecting all the data on trafficker behaviors, trafficker networks, who they're connected to, where they're trafficking, where they're recruiting, the money flows. We're building out evidence that it's like a really solid tip. But my favorite part is we're feeding it to the Fusion Center, which I like to call the smartest and most informed anti-trafficking detective in the country, because it has AI, it has parameterized algorithms, but also some like open-ended algorithms. So find the patterns that we know we need to meet the statute, but also tell us what else you're seeing. But then we're also feeding it data that we know is relevant. So it's identifiable, specific to their activity. So it's not like speculative or potentially biased because it's concrete, identifiable info. And it's really been transformational for investigations. So we'll have partners.
We just lost you. We lost you for a second. We can't hear you for some reason. Did the rest of you have the same problem?
No, I could hear her.
I can hear her.
Okay, great. I'm like, oh no, my mic looks fine. Okay. So essentially, I can cut it short now, and then if there's follow-up, let me know. But essentially, when our partners have a messier case or a less clear-cut case, they'll say, what do you have on this guy? I'm going to go work the case where the victim wants to talk to me or there's like clear evidence. And then in a couple days or weeks, if there's a lot of intel that we need to confirm, they'll come back to us. And we'll have sent them a full intel report of the whole network. So it's really also cutting out the effort and time that they have to put into it, which is another gap on top of the tech is they're not full-time staffed to be able to work on these cases. Most cities don't have like a trafficking unit, a full-time investigator, no analysts at all in some places, definitely not an assigned prosecutor. So the tech is urgent from the advanced capacity that the traffickers have over us, but also from the efficiency standard and the accuracy
But I
standard
can't hear
that
them.
can be missing.
Hi. While Judge Kendall figures out her audio, 'cause she cannot hear us right now, but we can hear her. I'll just take it from here. Thank you, Rochelle, for sharing that info. And it sounds like what you've been doing has been extremely impactful with, to your point, getting traffickers like in jail and off the streets. Because I've also had that experience where you help a girl, but there's still 10 other people being trafficked.
And they feel guilty, like I left them behind, you know? Yeah.
Right. So a big part is actually getting justice served, and justice served in like a timely manner too. I think we can all seen within the in the news how long it can take for a case to actually pass through the justice system. And especially you know, a hot one would be R. Kelly. I mean, he had allegations against himself for like 10 plus years before anything actually happened
20.
there. 20. Double that. Hi, Judge Kendall.
Any luck?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just can't hear you. I have no idea what happened. All of you are muted to me. So I'm gonna have IT come up here. Katherine, can you pick up the discussion while IT is coming? I'm sorry.
No worries. So one of the next things that we would love to talk about, and I'll just bounce it to all three of you all, is what are the risks that you are seeing within AI or AI being used for trafficking? So how do we combat the use like of AI with especially creating pornographic images, AI potentially helping stop like the forensic analysis of these cases? Yeah, I'll pass it to you, Sharon, first.
So, well, I'm more focused on the prevention, but definitely there is law that has just been passed in the UK to make it illegal to create AI models that would create illegal images of children. And I think I definitely see legislation taking a big part of this. They need to outlaw AI that can, you know, exacerbate the problem. I think they know what it is. The problem with legislation is there's a lot to navigate on privacy and, you know, ethics. Certainly in Europe, you know, we have a lot of legislation around the rights of children. You know, they have explicit consent on things like, you know, their special category data. And it's a bit of a minefield legislating whenever there's big platforms of AI and then, making legislation that's going to work in every single marketplace, because it has to work everywhere, doesn't it? This is a global social problem. So to disrupt these sort of dark forces, if you like, I think the world's got to come together. We've got to share what's happening in each of the different marketplaces. And if you don't mind me criticizing slightly, in the States, it tends to be quite kind of tunnel vision. You look very much nationally. A lot of the harm is being consumed in the US and the UK and Europe, but actually the trafficking of children is happening in places like the Philippines. And I think we need to really we need to all be fully aware of what the situation actually is and not be insular on just, what's happening in my backyard. If we're going to solve these big problems, the AI models are everywhere all the time, and they're clever, and we need to solve this internationally and all together.
Awesome. Oh,
You're muted still, Judge Kendall. But I think you heard me, which is exciting.
I know. I'm on my phone. Does that work?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, there we go. We'll do it that way. I've got two things going. All right, folks, I'm so sorry about that. Who knows, right in the middle, some poltergeist. I heard what Sharon was saying about our myopia, and it's so true. We in the United States do have blinders on frequently. It has been that way. It's continuing in that way. I sat on an AI panel yesterday with a World Organization on Patent Law. And, the question about developing patents and protecting intellectual property in the area of AI is, of course, another whole issue. And the issue regarding whether anything could ever be protected, whether anything can ever be licensed if AI is continually learning and continually developing, and what is the reality of that. All of those same issues impact not just economy, not just exploitation, but in so many different areas. So I think it's interesting that Ms. Alexander decided that we would do this as part of the Booth School of Business, right? Because it is really a business-oriented product, and both of you, or all three of you, are working in this area in some way, trying to handle it. But it's true that the global nature of it is really critical. I don't want to say something that is out of turn, but I take it you were talking about the risks, right, Katherine? Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Right. Right. So what are the gaps or the needs that we need? What are the, you're all the best
to talk
experts.
about still.
Yeah, I would love
Oh,
to talk
good.
about risks as well.
Oh, good. Oh, then thank you for putting me back in line. So Rochelle, tell me about risks. I would love to hear it.
I think there's a couple risks and then if we're talking about the US specifically, we get myopic in other ways. So I agree with the area that Sharon talked about, but we also kind of obsess over the federal, and we're not really paying attention at state and county levels enough. And that's where you're going to see most of the trafficking. That's where they have the ability to build the stronger cases, maybe in collaboration with the feds sometime, but we really miss out on that. And then when you think about the more we lean into AI, in my experience, most of the apps that are popping up are, and I'm really sorry for anyone, I'm just going to say it, like random tech bros that want to build something. And it's not always thinking about like officer safety or like really serious criminal justice nuanced considerations, because they don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And if you can consultation calls with an expert doesn't suddenly make your whole product built expertly. So I'm really stressed about the potential for AI to be leaned on for example, let's automate deconfliction. Okay, but what if the cop had a typo and the name is slightly different? Or what if the 3 other conspirators didn't get listed or uploaded properly? And now cops are maybe going to get shot. There's really serious implications, I think, from non-systemic actors building in isolation this stuff, and then just scaling it up fast without testing it. So that stresses me out. And then also, I think there's a really strong push in the US for the data to always be de-identified. And in a way, I also understand that, because most of the people trying to do at scale work are either academic or again, don't have that systemic knowledge or expertise. So perhaps the privacy and safety we have to really weigh it high. But then how can we get the right estimates if we're doing like bulk analysis, and also make sure that we're deduplicating and avoiding potential bias? And some of that identifiable information is necessary for the data to be accurate, especially since we always obsess over like national scale or one little area that's then extrapolated for the whole nation. And if we're going to do stuff like that, we really need to make sure that it's as accurate as possible. And sometimes de-identification, I think, gets rid of nuance that's really important. Those are my two risks that I would throw out there.
Caleb, are you a random tech bro?
I mean, I just, Rochelle and I just met, and I already love her because she's thrown out random.
I know, right?
And she's advocated for state and local law enforcement, which is where I came from, and definitely experienced like that. I was getting hammered with cases without all the support I needed to do it, and I was just flying by the seat of my pants. So Rochelle, you and I are kindred spirits in so many ways.
Well, and Caleb and Rochelle, the reason that I created the task force model years and years ago was because there's no way that the feds can see what is on the streets. There's no way. They're not the people that are in the trenches, and yet they do have a lot of ability to get, resources for a further investigation. And if you get victims through the federal system, they usually have a really good victim witness coordination because they're not taking in as many cases. So this concept of working together was really, really critical to human trafficking eradication. So we're all of us are of the state federal model together means absolutely something. But let's go talk to the random tech bro for a second.
Well, Judge, my concerns, I think Rochelle and Sharon have outlined some really, really good ones. I just want to bring in another. So IJM, we have offices all over the world trying to address violence against marginalized populations. A lot of times that takes the form of human trafficking in a lot of the countries we work in. And one of the risks I have been seeing, in addition to the creation of like child abuse material and stuff like that, is, the theft of technology in other countries gets into the hands of wrong people. And so we see this really ginormous, I don't know that that's a real word, but we see this huge human trafficking crisis in Southeast Asia, where you have people in modern day slavery to commit scams. And it's one of the greatest human trafficking catastrophes of our generation. And they are extensively using AI to create deepfake videos, images, profiles in order to make their scamming more sophisticated. And that's, that capability is coming from the tech bros and the theft of intellectual property of legitimate AI businesses. So I'm really concerned about that trend because it's made it very convincing. And this this particular form of human trafficking just has so many implications everywhere. Yes, you have the survivor, the victim of modern slavery that's forced to commit these scams, but you also have people all over the globe losing their entire retirement, their life savings. It's just, so that's one of the concerns, and one of the areas that I've been seeing is that offenders will use it. They're using this technology as, if not more efficiently than we are.
And some of the technology that's being used in those scam projects, those scam trafficking centers, are like the voice changing technology, right? So it used to be maybe you got a call from somebody with a thick Telugu accent, and you didn't, you're like, oh, well, that's somebody, far away in India, you'd hang up. But now they can change their voice, and they have scripts that are they feed the information in immediately to their system, and it is terrifying the way that it's being used. And the deep fakes is certainly something that in the legal area, they're looking to regulate and to sanction. I did want to say something regarding what Sharon said about the service providers not having buy-in, which I totally agree with. And yet we are seeing, for those of you who are familiar with them, and we've talked about them in our class, we're seeing more and more lawsuits being filed by victims about certain platforms that are using algorithms and using AI to, boost the ads or boost the child pornographic images, et cetera, in order to make money, right? And the closer you get to someone with the platform having a hand in that development, the more likely now that the law will find you as being someone who's aiding the venture of human trafficking. So it's been, you first saw those cases in the area of hotels, when someone would turn a blind eye at the front desk and there was maybe a back door to get to, and that was the way they would say, you're aiding the venture, this hotel chain, right? But now what we're doing is we're seeing some more cases where they're suing the platforms that are using AI to boost sales of a certain area, and of course they make money off of it. So it's not an unsympathetic. I mean, it's not a sympathetic person to go after if that's what they're using it for. So let me ask about big tech for a minute, okay? Oh, no, I was going to ask you about gaps and what are the needs, because I think that there's definitely a lot of gaps. I mean, we have to recognize we're not only talking about a tool that is just expanding on a daily basis, but literally the AI databases are just learning on every time someone enters into them. So what are the gaps and the needs for this industry, especially as it pertains to human trafficking? Maybe I'll mix it up and start with you, Rochelle.
There's a lot. Let me focus from my perch and perspective. In an ideal world, we could launch and scale up the Fusion Center immediately. We had dozens of big city agencies ready to go. Then you learn we have around 17,000 cities. Many don't have digitized data. Even though our statutes are very similar, the data is not structured the same way. And I'll talk about the tech bros again. So there's like pockets of the country all using a different system, and the tech bros have made it a mess because, for example, I was talking to a county in 3 counties in Texas in the past couple of weeks asking for a few pieces of data, like, oh, we can't search by criminal charge. And I'm like, what the hell can you search by? Like, why can't you search by criminal charge? That's insane to me. They're like, we really want to give it to you, but like the tech can't let us search that way. So anyways, really kind of like mind-blowing issues. So first of all, many don't have their data digital. They have to photocopy for you. Or if it's digital, many have scanned it as PDFs and it'll be like scanned as a photo or something. So you can't actually even parse from the PDF. And then the next problem is they don't have their own systems. So it's different types of systems and structures across the country that don't always communicate well. So that's a really big gap in doing cross-jurisdictional collaboration. And I would say pre-internet, we didn't need that at the local level because that was the federal job and responsibility, right? But now jurisdiction's almost meaningless thanks to the internet. So the locals really do need to have some way to do this, but we haven't caught up. And it's a huge barrier to enforcement in local areas. And then I think, again, the lack of investment at the government level, because it's not profitable, you're not going to become a billion-dollar unicorn company, so we're not interested in it, is a huge problem. We just did another venture capital pitch, which we do like once a year, and all of the questions were like, how can you profit? What's your path towards this dollar amount? I was like, I'm not interested in answering any of those questions. That's not my focus. Well, you should be a for-profit. I'm like, this is why I'm not actually a for-profit, because we need to have impact. And if I'm obsessed with getting to be a billion-dollar company, I won't. And I do think that we really need to rethink our investment in society, and it shouldn't always be about profit, because that's almost empowering trafficking. So I think our perspectives on it are busted, and also our investment in local capacity is a really big gap.
Caleb?
Yeah, I just love everything that Rochelle says. And so I think you take some of those same gaps, the challenges of operating across jurisdictions, even in the United States, and you go to an international scale, and those are magnified even further because then you're not dealing with similar laws. You're oftentimes dealing with very dissimilar legislation, with political interests, with um, you know, like the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty process, the MLAT process, in a world that is powered by, you know, a very high speed internet, by online offenders that don't care about jurisdiction, by AI and financial means like cryptocurrency that don't care about jurisdiction. You know, I was in the Philippines one time, and we had an MLAT that we needed information to help protect a child. The Philippine National Police requested information. This child was actively being harmed, and the MLAT still took 14 months.
Yeah.
So I often say that, you know,
Mm.
when seconds and minutes matter, an MLAT's only a year away. And so we have to, one of the major gaps is we have to re-envision how we legislate and treat some of these issues. And we need more companies, more business-minded people like Rochelle, like Sharon, that, like she said, the impact is really the goal. The In the law enforcement space, there's a lot of really good technology out there, but a lot of it is driven by profit. And so the barrier for a small police agency to get some of these really advanced tools that would really help, it's just not going to happen. There's no budget for it, you know? And
Right.
so
Right.
that's really important.
I'm going to, Sharon, I know it's your turn, and I'm just going to kind of feed in a question that came from the audience regarding the UK law point. Matt asks, do you foresee a potential market problem with manufacturers, and how do you appeal to the profit motive? My reaction to the question is that national and international law requiring something like this when harm block is already integrated in the market would maybe see an explosion in investment plus growth. Do you think that creation of such laws is needed for this tech to change the problem, or would it just be helpful?
Well, I mean, fortunately, there aren't barriers to deploying our sort of tech into the operating system of devices. The barriers, I guess, to getting good tech into the market, in many, I would say the barriers, the points to navigate, as we mentioned earlier, are privacy, freedom of speech, you know, those sort of ethical, really kind of foundational laws, which I think we should be observant of those. You know, those are really important kind of cornerstones of society. So, you know, technology like ours, I think definitely should be navigating these proficiently. That balance between safety and privacy is something that policymakers need to kind of define for us. Otherwise, nefarious organizations will, you know, they'll be triumphing over the good. And I think going back to what you said, Rochelle, about impact, about this again, ethics, it's such an interesting subject because profit versus purpose. You know, we are a commercial organization. People are people, aren't they? Some are good and some are bad. That is the world we live in. A lot of charities have bad people in them, and a lot of commercial organizations have got good people in them. And we're sitting here as a group, you know, fighting the good fight. And we're doing this because we're interested in impact. You know, and I definitely, as an entrepreneur in a tech company, have found that, you know, face to face or meeting people, talking to people, getting stuff done, finding the right people in organizations and explaining, you know, is how you get, how we find the way through. I wrote down earlier on it, you know, for me, the gaps are that link between There are a lot of tech companies out there hungry to develop solutions, and there's a lot of problems out there that governments are looking for solutions to. For me, we need to bridge that gap of the safety tech industry, trying to work out what to develop to plug the gaps. We need better integration between what's needed, you know, and getting deployment of that, linking up for government and policymakers to be able to connect with what is the art of the possible, and then being able to embed that in legislation and then regulate that out to big tech. Because, you know, that's getting tools like ours to be accredited independently, and then to say to big tech, I don't care, suck it up. This is what you've got to do. This is the law. Do it, or else we will, you know, we'll litigate. You know, we need we need people like, I mean, you might love Trump or you might hate him, but he makes bold decisions. Leaders have got to make bold decisions, haven't they? They've got to make bold decisions to get these policies over the line. They've got to link arms at the top, all of them. And there is a coalition of regulators around the world. There's 16 of them, I think, 16 countries that sit and meet, and they exchange what they have learned in their marketplaces, and they share information. And for me, that's really good. Don't know if that answered the question.
Thank you so much. And in order to really hold those, you know, big tech responsible, as has been said more than once here today, especially from Rochelle and then later reiterated by Caleb, you know, they really are thinking monetarily. They're thinking of profit. And usually the way it works in the law is that until they are hurt, right, by a lawsuit that impacts them, they don't feel the hurt. They don't have the buy-in until they think that this is going to harm me, right? So either there's got to be a law that says this is your responsibility if you're going to profit on this tech. You need to also be a responsible corporate citizen and follow this rule, or it's going to be these individual cases that are presented not in courts of criminal law where we're prosecuting traffickers, but rather in courts of civil law where they're going after big tech and saying, this is your responsibility, and you've harmed individuals as a result. And we're seeing that percolate up, but I think one of the questions in the queue here is, what are the frameworks that facilitate effective sharing and collaborative research among NGOs, academics, techs, law enforcement? What is that framework there? And thank you, Isabella from Vancouver, who asked that. Rochelle, do you have a sense of what that framework is or could be?
Absolutely. I think it does tie back to accountability. I think big tech is constantly trying to build solutions off the back of suggestions from government and NGOs so they can monetize it, when instead they should be building internal mechanisms that actually make it, that's where they will actually make the most difference. If social media and messaging collaborated with us to learn about how Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat are being used to recruit victims so that they can then adjust their internal algorithms to prevent it or to educate people. Online marketplaces and job platforms and even the social media around job recruitment should be doing similarly so that it can strengthen employer verification, monitor fraudulent job listings, and flag non-consensual content on LinkedIn. Like, do stuff with moderation. Financial and payment companies absolutely really need to be paying attention for not just suspicious transactions and fraud, which impacts profit, but also illicit finance flows. And they've been having huge penalties lately for not doing that. Hospitality and travel also sued abundantly for not doing enough. It really is, they need to be focusing inward, in my opinion.
Right. So in our class, we talked about that buy-in that comes from a corporation, and some of them, just because of their mark, just because of their reputation, want to put out to the public, this is something we are doing. And so there is buy-in that comes, like, for example, if you're Nike and you get a black eye because someone finds out you're selling shoes, you know, made in Malaysia in a factory from small children, you know, you getting ahead of that and saying, this is what we're doing with our sales force, you know, this is what we're doing with our tech, is frequently of value to their customer, frequently of value to those individuals. And so one of the ways that we, in this area of concern, can pitch to companies is that even without the regulation, even without the law, there is a value to being the good corporate citizen that enhances these models and uses them for the good as opposed to just for profit. Caleb, did you want to join in with anything there?
I just wanted to say that we're only limited in how we all collaborate in these frameworks by the lack of our own imagination. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
like, and I was, you know, I've been guilty of this. When I was a law enforcer in the US, it was like, okay, NGO, you stay over here, tech stay over here, us law enforcers, we'll stay over here, the solicitor's office, y'all stay over there, and we'll all do our own thing. And it's only in the hindsight of experience that I realized how ineffective that was. And so in the Philippines, we actually, IJM partnered together with the Philippine National Police, the National Bureau of Investigation, so the two lead law enforcement agencies in the Philippines, along with the Australian Federal Police, the National Crime Agency, and the Dutch National Police to form the Philippine Internet Crimes Against Children Center. And this was a central place that everybody could come to collaborate. We had the Anti-Money Laundering Council there. We had Western Union, for example, was amazing to work with in the Philippines. And so this like collaborative space resulted in, I mean, the 3 years that I was there. So we were the form of human trafficking that we were working on there is this really unique form of live streaming abuse, where traffickers in the Philippines will sell a live streaming abuse show of a child to a Westerner for money, in exchange for money. Newsflash, most of those purchasers come from the US.
Right.
And we just found that this collaborative model, getting everybody in the same room, rowing the same direction. I know it sounds really common sense, but once you break down these silos and actually get people to do it, I mean, in 3 years, we ended up safeguarding 357 children. And that incredible what is possible when you get government, NGOs, private sector, all in the same room, rowing in the same direction.
Sharon, can I call on you for this?
So I'm an old cynic, I'm afraid, Judge Kendall. You know, we've been doing this for 13 years. We've been part of the Tech Coalition for a while, which is an organization set up by big tech to find safety tech like ours that they could deploy and put on their platforms. And I mean, I just came to the conclusion that we were pushing, we didn't have a willing partner. When you're trying to sell something, you at least need somebody who wants to buy it.
Right.
So that's why we pivoted to the handset, where we had a willing partner. Now that was going in the direction of course, market forces. So that's why we went there. But I just want to draw your attention to, sorry to mention Trump again, but do you remember when he just switched off TikTok like that? Yeah. I mean, who knew that was possible? That was amazing. He could switch any of them off anytime he wants. I mean, there's the power right there. These organizations are bigger than most countries. They stand in front of Congress and they are not intimidated. You know, this is a really big problem that we have trying to get them to take account. Do you know what? If we could put half of their C-suite on a plane to the Philippines and actually educate them, most of them don't know what CSAM actually is. They really don't.
Yeah,
It's an educational opportunity here, but you talk about billing, fining them. I think when it's on the device, it doesn't matter what application the child is using. That's why we've pivoted our business, and I'll leave it to you guys to work out the platforms. I've given up on them.
Right. Well, I do think one thing that you said is really critical, and that is, I think the lack of understanding of what child exploitation is that is out there. I think it's so basic to our message. And I do believe that the average human being thinks, oh, it's like a picture of a naked kid or something, right? I honestly don't think there is a basic understanding in our Congress, before our senators, when we talk about the risks of this and what people are seeing. And I think going towards Congress in any kind of regulatory way, which to change any laws, we would have to require them to recognize the reality of what all of us on this discussion are seeing and working against. And I just know that for 30 years in this field, I think the average person I speak to has no idea what I'm really talking about. And you don't usually say to someone, well, we're talking about a video of a 50-year-old man raping a 2-year-old for 30 minutes. Like, we don't say that in public because it's so horrible to say in public, but I think maybe the public really needs to become much more aware of what we're talking about when we're talking about what you want eliminated from that phone instantly. And until they recognize that their 10-year-old can see that in a second when you give them that phone, they aren't going to do anything about it. Oh
Just
my
to add
goodness.
something to that, Judge Kendall, it just sort of suddenly occurred to me, if you break the speeding limit too many times in the UK, you have to go on a speed awareness course. It would be great, wouldn't it, if a platform had some CSAM material on it, that meant that the senior
Right.
leadership team had to go and do a CSAM awareness course. I wish they
Right.
put that in the policies and law.
And it has to be enforced, of course, which is a big challenge that we talk about in our class all the time. We have, 50 states have supply chain laws in some fashion or another, and yet there's no one enforcing those, right? But we look at some pieces of legislation in the past, like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which sat dormant for years and nobody did anything with it. And then suddenly the SEC comes involved, and every case that comes up with them is like a multi-million or billion-dollar fine, right? And then all of a sudden they wake up and say, okay, we shouldn't be bribing foreign officials when we're setting up our Costco or whatever we're doing in Mexico today. So it's got to be enforced by someone, and it's got to be, in a situation where they're really going to hit them on the bottom line where it hurts.
And I wanted to flag someone in the comments, former federal investigator flagged that there's actually a lot of law enforcement appetite for this, and the myopic focus on prosecution in the US is at the prosecution level. So we really do need to push more resources to federal prosecutors to be able to build the international aspects of it too.
Here's a question. Say a company was interested to link the download of their app for use by customers with a SafeToNet type technology. In other words, when customers use, say, a payment app, the SafeToNet technology is also turned on. Is that possible? Could it be possible to have the SafeToNet tech then spread to other devices used by the same customer? There's an interesting way to pitch this to financial institutions. Just brainstorming, says Tori. What do you think, Sharon? Can that happen?
So the great thing about it's basically an AI algorithm. It can be dropped anywhere that inspects images. It's very versatile. I mean, we were trying to sell it to the platforms, but of course they didn't want to know. So that's why we've gone on the device and the operating system, but it can sit anywhere. So it's highly adaptable. I mean, when we brainstorm, of course, our heads explode with the opportunities of this, but we've started where we've started. I think that answers your question.
And actually, Sharon,
Sharon, I
have
sorry.
one more question in the chat about your product. It's and it was from Kevin. Does the AI application process the images locally on the phone? And if so, how does it notify law enforcement?
So it doesn't report. In order to observe privacy, it's the AI is baked into the operating system and it's compressed. So it analyzes in two places, on the camera and in the device, in order to, so if it detects harm, it doesn't render it to the screen. And if it detects harm, it won't allow the child to broadcast it. But nothing happens. So no image gets created. So there's nothing to report, if you know what I mean. If you start reporting and content starts leaving the phone, that then is a big responsibility on the manufacturer, which might put them off, you know, that kind of statute of, you know, reporting.
But Sharon, I think of the other uses of the technology. You know, we had those horrible terrorist beheading videos on the internet, on Instagram and such things like that. You know, it could prevent that. It could prevent that kind of message from being sent, right?
Yes,
so there is the possibility of it catching whatever we determine is criminal activity and harmful. It doesn't need to simply be a child exploitation, right? So there's a possibility of really expanding this to protect us in other ways for like national security.
But that's what we're talking about the UK government about training it on whatever harm, you know, we would need to decide on a data set, and we would then train it on millions of images that have that, so that it could learn to identify. It could be drugs, as you say, gore, it could be radicalization, you know, so it's an exciting area that then could be embedded into, if you think of in the educational system, all the children get given these laptops or tablets when they're little, and they bring that device all through school, you know, so, and deployment can be over the air. Currently, we're on the Android operating system because, of course, Apple are very interested in privacy, and I don't know whether they'd be interested in our solution, but they might be shamed into taking it once it gets out into the marketplace, because they'll be seen as the CSAM phone, and all the Android phones will be non-CSAM, and suddenly, you know, it'll be, oh.
Yes.
There was one other question in the chat that geared more towards you, Rochelle. Can you talk a little bit about your AI algorithm that works on your network? Is that in internet and open source searches?
So the data is manually collected just because we need to make sure that it's accurate. And as I talked about before, public records have various degrees of access and structure. The AI itself, so yeah, most of our data that's proprietary to us, we're manually collecting and structuring. We also, as a fusion center, the concept of fusion centers are to fuse data from multiple data sources and bring them together in one place. So we've spent a really concerted effort not duplicating what exists. So if we're creating data sets, they don't exist yet, is our main primary goal. Or if there's an agency that's like, we made it, it would be easy for you to make, and we're going to charge you $1 million to partner, then it's like, okay, fine, we're just going to duplicate it. But the goal is to not have to do that. And then we do have partnerships. So in addition to our open source curated data, we have partnerships with law enforcement agencies, financial data, some business records, stuff that's not quite open source that we fuse together using AI. And the AIs themselves, yeah, we don't use it for the collection side, I would say. Scraping and stuff, but I don't know if that's AI anymore. I feel like the AI term has lost all meaning to me.
That's fair. Well, I know we're at 12:59. And there are 2 more questions in the chat, so I apologize for not being able to get to you all with the time that we have. But I really appreciate Sharon, Judge Kendall, Rochelle, Caleb, you all joining this seminar, giving us your expertise and your advice, and giving us a lot to chew on and how to continue to combat human trafficking and how technology plays and big tech into this industry.
And you can bet Rochelle and Sharon and Caleb, you're going to be hearing from me soon so I can gather more information to educate, because we have to keep up. So thank you. And I mean, from my perspective, thank you that there are smart tech people out there thinking about this as opposed to just thinking about the bottom line. It is heartwarming to me, really it is. Thank you. All right, everyone, you have a great day.